Vicksburg Campaign. During the Civil War, Vicksburg, Mississippi had earned the label the Gibraltar of the Confederacy because of its impregnable situation on the Mississippi River. Union Major General Ulysses S. Grant's successful Vicksburg campaign came at a high cost, but it succeeded in cutting off the Confederacy's only remaining route to its western regions with their indispensable supplies. After Grant made several unsuccessful forays to capture the strategic fortress city during the winter of 1862 and 1863, he proposed a bold stroke to circumvent Vicksburg's natural obstacles and Confederate fortifications. In the spring of 1863, Grant ordered his army to march south of Vicksburg on the west side of Mississippi and sent Rear Admiral David D. Porter's supporting flotilla past the citadel's batteries to rendezvous with his forces south of Vicksburg. From April 30th through May 1st, Grant hurled 24,000 men from Major General John McClernand's 13th Corps and Major General James B. McPherson's 17th Corps across the Mississippi at an undefended Bruinsburg in America's largest amphibious operation up to that time. Lieutenant General John C. Pemberton, Confederate commander of Mississippi and eastern Louisiana, found himself in a very difficult situation. Lieutenant General Joseph E. Johnson had reassigned most of Pemberton's cavalry to the Army of Tennessee, which rendered Pemberton's intelligence slow and ineffectual. By May 3rd, Grant secured his beachhead and continued his overland campaign to capture Vicksburg. On May 12th, near Raymond, 14 miles southwest of Jackson, Grant encountered his first major Confederate resistance, but McPherson's advance guard forced the Confederate troops to retreat after a brutal 6-hour-long battle. Grant then directed McPherson northeast to Clinton to destroy the railroad and then to move on to Jackson, while General William T. Sherman's 15th Corps made straight through Raymond toward the Mississippi capital. By May 14th, Sherman's troops had fought their way through the thin Confederate rearguard and occupied Jackson. Meanwhile, Johnson had arrived in Jackson on May 13th to take command of all Confederate forces in Mississippi. However, Pemberton ignored his orders to consolidate their forces and march southeast in an effort to cut Grant's line to the Mississippi. On May 16th, 18 miles west of the capital, the two forces collided at Champion's Hill. The Confederate forces were unable to arrest the Union advance, and portions of Pemberton's line broke, which forced him to withdraw to prepared positions along the Big Black River. The next day, Sherman's forces outflanked Pemberton, who ordered a total withdrawal and rushed back to Vicksburg with the Union army in hot pursuit. Johnson again ordered Pemberton to evacuate Vicksburg and march northeast to join him in a coordinated attack on Grant. In response to Johnson's message, Pemberton held a council of war, and his officers unanimously elected to remain within the confines of the city's substantial defenses. Grant, apprehensive about an extended siege, made two costly frontal assaults on Vicksburg, one on May 19th and one on May 22nd, but his forces suffered heavy casualties and were beaten back both times. Forced into siege warfare, Grant ordered his engineers to dig a series of trenches along the 7 miles of Confederate earthworks. By the end of May, 50,000 Union soldiers occupied the trenches, and 2 weeks later, 21,000 more joined the Union army surrounding Vicksburg. Grant then concentrated on cutting off Confederate supply lines to the besieged city. Although Pemberton had begun stockpiling provisions in March, conditions inside Vicksburg rapidly deteriorated. On July 3rd, Pemberton concluded that his beleaguered men could no longer stand the rigors of sustained combat and starvation. On Independence Day, 1863, Pemberton surrendered 2,166 officers, 27,230 enlisted men, 172 cannon, and 60,000 long arms. The entire Union force, both soldiers and sailors, celebrated the 4th of July with a ceremony of surrender. The capture of Vicksburg solidified Grant's reputation as a fighting general prepared to win the war despite casualties. Along with his later victories near Chattanooga, Vicksburg guaranteed his spectacular rise to lieutenant general and commander of all Union armies.